We've all seen the last two seasons of 3 up, 3 down, but none of the clubs that have been promoted and then swiftly relegated are quite the same as Leeds United. None of them have gone up with the same quality that Leeds currently have, none of them have the pull that Leeds have, and none of them have the money to throw at their survival like Leeds United do. So today we're going to sit down and look at what Daniel Farke's Leeds United must do to avoid being relegated back to the Championship in order for them to lay the foundations for potential future success in the Premier League. First, we've got to establish that the way Leeds have played this season simply can't be the same in the Premier League. Now, yes, they've been brilliant at preventing shots on goal, conceding the least XG in the Championship, but a large part of that has stemmed from their dominance with the ball, having the most possession in the league. And they've also got an overwhelming amount of quality in comparison to the rest of the league, with players like Tanaka constantly being there to retain possession and allow Leeds to sustain pressure and prevent teams from coming back at them. However, next season they won't have more quality than majority of sides in the division. In fact, they'll probably have some of the least amount of quality in the Premier League, and on top of that, their way in which they pin teams in and therefore reduce the amount of shots that they can have simply won't work, because other teams have too much quality, are too tactically diverse, and will find them out very, very quickly. But I don't think that Leeds need a full, gigantic £300 million rebuild to survive. They've just got to be very, very smart. So I've built myself a little squad here of the Leeds team. The green players I feel like are worthy to be a Premier League starter, with the yellow/orange players are squad/impact options, and then red means not good enough. Now, there's going to be a few you disagree with. I might have been too kind on some, I might have been too harsh on others. Please just give me a reason why. Don't just drop some mad abuse on me. It hurts, lads. But we're going to start off in goal, because I think this is the easiest position to suss out. Meslier cannot be playing. He cannot play games. I mean, last season, a 70.7% save percentage despite making the least saves in the division. He then also prevented a negative 2.73 goals, and as I said before with the saves, made just 1.67 saves per 90. He was absolutely abysmal. I've got a replacement for him later on in the video. So we'll move on to centre half, and this where I might have been too harsh on Pascal Struijk, but I've gone with Rodon as a good enough player. I think he's been really, really good this season. And yes, I am a big admirer of Struijk. If you've watched my videos throughout this season, you'll know that. But I do feel like the injury issues are a little bit of a worry. 34 games missed through injury prior to this past season, and it's not great. He missed majority of the final games for Leeds this season as well. And I don't think his quality this season has been good as we've once seen. So maybe having him as a third centre-back option or potentially moving him on wouldn't be the biggest issue. But this is where I feel like some people may have a little bit of a problem, because I've got Firpo as not good enough to be a starting option. Now, it's important to put context here, because Firpo and Bogle have been two of Leeds' most important players this season. But the pair of them absolutely, and I mean absolutely, cannot start at the same time. And that's if Firpo stays. He might be leaving yet. When we look at how Leeds have been in possession this season, it's often been a 2-2 in build-up. So where the hell are the fullbacks when they are building this way? Well, Jayden Bogle is extremely wide, and you can see him just at the bottom of the screen. And Junior Firpo on the opposite side is also extremely high and wide. It's a risky way of playing with just two in the first line, but all the top teams who dominate the lower sides play this way, because they've got the quality to pin sides in and play this way. Firpo and Bogle's positioning means that the wingers can often invert inside and get shots off from the half spaces, or be creative outlets like we've seen Dan James do, we've seen Solomon do, and as we see here, Solomon is the one in this case where he picks the ball up in the half space area, as Firpo is basically in the traditional byline winger space, dragging the fullback wide and creating separation between the defence and the midfield. This means Solomon can drift around as he pleases and pick up the ball, which is what he's done all season. Now, the problem is, Leeds won't be a top team in the division next season. They won't be one of the better sides. So, this pinning teams back with their fullbacks probably won't work. And now I feel like if they are to sacrifice Firpo, or if Firpo leaves anyway, which is looking a real possibility, they need to bring in someone more defensively sound, because I do feel like Bogle has the physical attributes, and the improvement in his defender has been incredible this season to come in and play in the Premier League. But Firpo, on the other hand, again, I'm a big fan, but I feel like as a pair, they just wouldn't work. So I've got a left back who I think should be coming in. I'm going to bring him in later in the video. We then look at who we've got in defensive midfield, and I think Ampadu and Tanaka is sound. I think it's really, really sound. If you can bring in a new number 8 to maybe playing a 3, and you have Ampadu sitting with Tanaka and a new number 8, that's brilliant. That's really, really good. I think Tanaka's been the best player in the league this season. I've said that throughout. I think Ampadu, once he gets going and he's not playing centre half and he's playing in the number 6, he can be that destroyer and physical profile that is desperately going to be needed for this side. And I think, Leeds fans will know them too. Probably more than sound. We'll need some kind of competition to kind of help them out a bit, but we'll touch on that later on. And then I'll move on to the wingers. Dan James has been incredible this season. 21 goal contributions in 30 starts is insane. He's also been creative as well as a goal scorer with 2.17 passes into the penalty area per 90 and 4 progressive carries per 90 with 5.83 crosses per 90 as well. So he's someone who can be really direct, can carry you the ball forward and will get off shots from any angle almost, and he's done that all season. Then we've got Nonsu, who's not been utilised as much this season, but I do feel like he's going to be good enough for the Premier League, isn't he? We've seen Willie Nonto do it before. He's mature now. I think he's good enough to compete for a starting spot. Maybe not start every game, but he'll compete. Then we've got in the middle, Aronson. We'll not even talk about him. He's not good enough, is he? Then we go on the left. Solomon, I just don't think is worth the money. I think a lot of time, when you get players going from the Championship to the Premier League, I know Solomon's been in the Prem before, but this season, he's had a good season. He's been really, really good. Won so many points for you. He's won them the title on the final day. But you need wingers who are direct and extremely fast. And rather than going round the man in a roundabout way, which I feel Solomon does, they bang, get the ball, byline, ball in the box, or straight through the defender, shot on goal, which is not what Solomon does. It's not what someone like Jack Clark did. He's not taking a step up well. So I'd stay away for what would probably be 20 odd million. I think you can do better. Then Ramazani, I'm kind of thinking of putting him in starting. I think, yes, he's been massively underutilised this season. The most goals per night in the division. I feel like, for me, in the Premier League, when Leeds are probably going to be playing in transition, there's going to be more space in front of him. Ramazani will cook. He will cook. He's still a little bit raw. He's very direct. He's not necessarily that winger who will come inside like maybe Solomon. But that means that in the Premier League, when there's more space to go down the line and maybe attacking in counter-attacking places, Ramazani will be really good. Then we move up front. A new striker needs to come in. Joseph, I'd keep around. I think he's good off the bench as a presser. Pirro, yes, unbelievable goal record. But outside of the goals, there's not been too much this season. And then Bamford, I feel like it's just time to move him on. I'm not sure if he's got much left on his contract, but I would just move him on. So that's my current overview of the squad before we head into the signings that I think Leeds need to make. And I'm going to start off with the keeper. Now, Kelleher looks like a brilliant move for Leeds, but he's going to Brentford. So that really would have been a top signing, but that's ruled out for Leeds United. But a place they could kind of reap the rewards of one of their fellow promoted teams getting raided is by going to Newcastle and trying to sign Nick Pope. Because James Trafford looks set to be going to Newcastle, which is obviously a shame for Burnley, but it could open the way for Nick Pope to depart. And with only a year left on his contract, under 10 million, it's a no-brainer for me. I've already said that Leeds will have to move away from their possession equals dominance and opposition opportunity prevention. So, having a keeper who's genuinely just a top-class shot stopper could be a great way to go, even if he's not brilliant with his feet. Despite Nick Pope making only 20 more saves than Mezia this season, he's averaged 3.14 per 90, and his tall frame has always been a huge strength for him in terms of his claiming crosses, and that could be huge in bailing out a Leeds defence, adjusting to having their box bombarded a lot more than they were having done in the Championship. For what would be a ridiculously cheap fee, and a keeper who still has maybe 2 or 3 years left in him, playing in the Premier League level, who's a top-class shot stopper, will prevent goals from going in, I think Nick Pope is an absolute no-brainer for Leeds United, especially for that cheap value. We then move on to look at the guys that are going to be in front of this potential Nick Pope goalkeeper. We're going to be looking at a centre-half, yeah, someone who can partner Joe Rodon. And I feel like a big Bruce with a bit of recovery pace would be really ideal for Joe Rodon, because he's not the fastest bloke, is he? But Leeds will probably defend a little bit deeper, so it'll help them out a little bit. And I'm not 100% sure if this pick right here is 100% realistic. It may not be. I've seen the likes of Nottingham Forest are showing interest in this lad. But the guy who I'm looking at is a 6'2" Slovenian called Jaka Bijol. I may have said that wrong. The 26-year-old is incredibly aggressive and uses his size to muscle attackers off the ball, whether it's on the halfway line to prevent an attack building up, or if it's defending right inside of his own box to stop an attacker from turning. On top of that, he also sat in the top 6% of Serie A centre-halves for aerials won this season, and the top 14% of Serie A centre-halves for clearances per 90. For what would reportedly be the asking price of €20 million, I think a backline of Pope, Rodon and Bijol would be absolutely incredible, and it'd cost Leeds, under 30 million quid. And that right there is a very, very solid foundation to then build a Premier League stable squad. Moving forward though, and there is one thing that I've not mentioned yet, and I mentioned it a lot when I talked about my Sunderland video and how they can build to survive next season, and it's about building a really physical and athletic squad. You've got to really skyrocket your flooring for physicality, otherwise teams find that edge over you in the Premier League. A lot of teams have found success doing that, and that's where I feel like Leeds can really impose themselves through the midfield, and that's where this centre midfielder I'm going to mention should be coming in. I do think there's multiple options for Leeds here, and I would like them to look inside the Premier League. I think that would be a good decision, and I've got two. I could have said Vinny Souza from the Championship, but that would have been boring because I brought him up for Sunderland, and I feel like Leeds need a little bit more of a multifaceted midfielder to pick up this role rather than an out-and-out number 6 type. So, I've got two. I'm leaning towards the latter, but I've got Thomas Souček and Sean Longstaff. Now, Souček speaks for himself. He's a player known for getting a goal out of nowhere, is absolutely massive, wins defensive duels, he does the lot, and his late box crashing movement and ability to sniff out goal from crosses or reverse passes into the box, similarly to how Brendan Aronson has done so this season, could be really, really nice for Leeds. However, Souček brings more than Aronson does in defensive stability and overall general play, if we're honest. But that then leads me on to talking about Sean Longstaff, because yes, Souček may be a little bit better in the final third, but I feel like Longstaff is a little bit more well-rounded. He's, I believe, slightly on the younger side. I could be wrong there. I should have probably checked. But he's probably going to be a little bit more expensive than someone like Souček. I think Souček's reported to be around 15-20 million. Longstaff will probably be just above the 20 million mark, so it's not too much difference, but I feel like Longstaff is a good option for Leeds. Due to him only making 8 starts this season, I think it's fair if we go back to the season prior where he was a regular player for Newcastle United. In that season, Longstaff just did his job to a really average level. He was decent. He got 6 goals and chipped in with a couple of assists. He also averaged just over 3 touches in the opposition's penalty box per 90, won 56% of his tackles, and won 3.83 duels per 90. As I mentioned previously, Brendan Aronson has had some sort of success by crashing at the box and scoring them goals, which is something that I do believe Longstaff could also bring with his runs into the box, especially if we see Daniel Farke transition this side into more of a counter-attacking way of playing. I think either of these established Premier League players would be good signings for Leeds, not too expensive, but would also raise the flooring of athleticism and physicality in the Leeds squad. Now, you can imagine a 3 of, let's say, Ampadu, Tanaka and Longstaff, or Ampadu, Tanaka and Souček. It might not be the most pretty, but that, for me, does very, very well in the fight to stay up. On to the big position now, though, and yes, it's the striker. I know I said before, Pirro scored goals, but outside of them goals, how good really was he? And with that Prem step up, he'll have less opportunities to score goals. He will be required to do a lot more outside the penalty box, and I just don't think he would be the man you want starting if you want to avoid relegation. So, I will admit I've gone very boring here. It's another Premier League player, bloody hell. But it's also one who's been heavily linked this summer already. I think Bettel from Everton would genuinely be incredible, and I've seen a few Leeds fans turn their nose up at it, but just hear me out when I explain my points here. This season, Bettel scored 8 league goals from 15 league starts, averaging 0.47 goals per 90 minutes, and that is genuinely really strong. But it's more than just the goals with Bettel. If we look at his heat map from the last 2 games of the season, we see he constantly runs the channels and pops up in areas across the pitch far more often than he's actually in and around the 18-yard box. His ability to move on the blind side of defenders to get in behind and also stretch the play by drifting wide makes him a nuisance, and often frees up space for other players to get on the ball in transition-based attacks, which could potentially be ideal for the likes of Ramazani, Willie Nonto, Dan James, Thomas Souček, when Leeds are playing in transition, because then players can exploit the space that Bettel leaves really well. But most importantly, on top of all this stuff about Bettel and his movement and his goals and how he contributes going forward, He has a top-class work rate and contributes defensively, which could be huge, again, for a Leeds side who will likely be under the cosh a lot more next season. He averaged 1.67 clearances per 90, 0.55 tackles in the mid-third of the pitch per 90, 1.7 touches in the defensive third per 90, and 5.81 aerial duel wins per 90, all this season. Now, obviously, the aerial duel wins do come into play with his hold-up play, which, again, could be really good for the other players around him to link up play with the likes of James and stuff. But I think for me, Beto will be a smart signing, 15 to 20 million quid. Again, smart, savvy, decent business, Premier League proven, he's not played too much, Premier League experience, he's a good one. But now we're on to probably one of the most important positions, because the fullbacks, I think I might have said at the start of the video, have been the most important part of Daniel Farke's system this season. And I struggled here when I was looking for a fullback. I feel like we need to find someone who's strong 1v1, is tall and physical, can basically be a third centre-back in possession for Leeds United, and is obviously going to be decent on the ball in order to do that. Now, it's much easier said than done, and to get someone that's absolutely perfect for this role, you probably have to spend 30 million quid or something, but that's probably a good way to spend your money if you're Leeds United. But I've gone with, it's a controversial one, but I just feel like it's the type of profile that we need. Whether or not it's realistic, I'm not sure. But again, it's the type of profile that Leeds United need. I don't know why I said we before. But I've gone with loaning in Radu Dragusin. I'm not sure if it's smart or not. The Romanian is currently injured and has had somewhat of a poor time at Tottenham, but in a team that demand less of him in possession and demand more defensive contributions, I think he would be really solid. Dragusin naturally has a bit of speed about him, and across his 14 Premier League starts this season, he's averaged 2.37 aerial duel wins per 90, 1.58 blocks per 90, and 1.08 interceptions per 90. Don't get me wrong, the numbers aren't insane, but in a Spurs side who've played a ridiculously rotated back line, who have all been really poor and really exposed through Ange Postecoglou's tactics, I feel like it's not awful. And I feel like, again, in the right system where he can be that defensive beast and use his physicality to monster games, the worst adjective I think I've ever used, monster games. We'll ignore that. But I feel like he would be really, really good for this Leeds team. Now, again, might not be the right player, but I feel like that is the right profile. So after them signings, this is my newly improved squad. I've got rid of the red, so obviously it's a smaller squad, but this is what I've got. Obviously, you've got Pope in goal. We'd have Bijan and Rodon at the back. You'd have Ampadu and Tanaka as the 2 sixes, Bogle and Dragusin as the 2 fullbacks, and then one of Longstaff or Souček, or maybe playing a 3 with, Longstaff, Ampadu, Tanaka, have Tanaka as the 8 alongside Longstaff, James Nonto, Beto, Ramazani. Now, do not get me wrong, there's going to be a lot of depth needed here. I would like a squad option to come in there. I feel like, again, probably a squad option here, because you're only probably going to get one of them. You might get both. If Firpo goes, you need a squad option left back. I feel like this is okay, having 3 people that are capable of playing as a number 6. Possibly a squad option here, depending on where Nonto's played, if he's on the right or on the left. And then maybe a squad option at right back. I feel like them little spots there. So what? With the Beto, Souček or Longstaff, Bijan, Pope and Dragusin side, that's 5 there. You then also need 1, 2, 3, 4. See, that would be 9 signings there to build a capable squad. I think that's about fair. With only 5 of them coming at the start 11, I think that is very, very solid. Leeds could build a top squad here. But let me know if you disagree with some of these, if you agree with some of them. Do let me know in the comments. I do also think that Leeds are unique because they have the pull to pull someone out of nowhere. They could get a random top class player in. They could bring in some players from abroad who no one really expects. And that would be very, very good. Now that there is obviously a very, very blank, quick overlay. It's not the deep, in-depth scouting that Leeds will probably do. And whether or not they sign one of them, I'm not sure. They might sign Pope, they might sign Beto. But the others, I'm not 100% sure. But I think that what we've done today is build the right profiles to platform Leeds to survival. If you have enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know who your number 1 dream signing is that's somewhat realistic for Leeds United in the comments. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Like and subscribe, please.